Okay, so I would read a question card for Dr. Williamson, but there are very few coming from Thorvaldson. So, question for Dr. Williamson.
Well, again, I chose this line because it was shorter. And I wanted to ask a question and kind of make a comment to both of you. First of all, I didn't feel like I was persuaded one way or the other. I think most of us came in, like you said, into this debate with our preconceived notions of God and kind of like our mind made up. And if God does exist and God is going to come into our life, I think it's going to happen regardless of whether or not this debate takes place. Also, it seems strange that two educated men such as yourselves used entirely sexist and gender-exclusive language throughout the whole debate. And I have three questions. First of all, regardless of whether or not you believe in God, and regardless of whether or not God exists, would you try and strive for a life filled with love? Yes? Yes?
Could you repeat the question?
Regardless of whether or not God exists, would you still live striving for a life filled with love? Yes or no?
I'd go for it.
Yeah?
Yes, I think
Okay.
I probably would.
All right. Now, do you believe that love is important or most important in this life, regardless of whether or not there's an afterlife?
That's a two-parter.
Regardless of whether or not there's an afterlife, do you believe that love in this life is important or most important?
I think it's important.
Okay.
I'm not sure about
No,
most
I wouldn't
important.
say so. It seems to me that in the absence of an afterlife, everything becomes futile, and that everything is reduced to meaninglessness.
Okay, but you do believe that love is important, right?
Oh, of course.
Okay, so then do you think that maybe we could gain more progress, more human progress and more progress here at a university, discussing and having a debate on the plight of patriarchy throughout history and obviously up to this point with sexist language, instead of dealing with something that we don't seem to be making any headway on and we can't know for sure?
So you're asking, wouldn't it be more important rather than having this debate to have a debate on patriarchy?
Well, considering the fact...
Do you have an open-ended question?
Well, it's just a yes or no question.
Right, that's a cross-examination. And so it's not going to be a discussion unless you ask something open-ended.
Well, it just seems strange that there is this use of sexist language and the exclusion of a number of people in this audience, and yet we're discussing, that seems something simple, and yet we're discussing and having a debate about something so huge and difficult. It just seems strange. Like, can you comment on that?
Well, I certainly would regret that I used all sexist language. I don't, sorry. I'm not sure what context I would be saying he, except to refer to Bill.
That's all right.
Or God. I guess I was making the assumption that we were talking about a Christian God who's typically depicted as male. Maybe that's sexist in itself. But remember, I'm the one who doesn't believe in him.
I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think that this is the most fundamental and important question that a person can ask. And that even questions, for example, of patriarchy and so forth, fall into insignificance if God does not exist, because then there are no objective moral values, and no one has any value. And you cannot condemn sexism, non-inclusivist language, and all the rest, because there isn't any absolute basis for moral values. In nature, whatever is right. If a great white shark rapes and copulates with another shark, it copulates with it, but there's no moral agency attached to that. Acts like rape go on all the time in the animal kingdom, and there is no moral agency attached to it. So the very issue that you're concerned with presupposes that there is some kind of objective moral foundation that needs to be there first. So I think this is a fundamental question. And of course, it's not mutually exclusive with discussing your question, that debate can take place tomorrow night. All of these questions can be explored at the university. This is an appropriate context for all issues to be raised.
Okay, point made. Dr. Craig.
Okay, Dr. Craig, I believe in your opening statement you said that the finite doesn't exist apart from the mind. But if
Say it again.
I'm sorry, the infinite. If the infinite, you said the infinite doesn't exist apart from the mind. But if the infinite doesn't exist apart from the mind, how can God be infinite apart from the mind? Is it not highly possible for God to exist only in our minds?
Right, very good question. Don't Christians or theists think that God is infinite? And if an actual infinite cannot exist, then how can God exist? It's important to understand that infinity, when it's applied to God, isn't a mathematical concept. It's not a quantitative concept. When I'm speaking of an actual infinite, I'm talking about a set that has an infinite number of definite and discrete finite particulars, like the set of natural numbers, or the set of guests in a hotel, or a set of marbles or baseball cards. But when people talk about the infinity of God, this isn't a quantitative concept. God isn't a set composed of an infinite number of definite and discrete finite parts. Rather, it's a qualitative notion when one speaks of God's infinity. It just means things like God is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good, eternal, necessary, all-present, and all of those superlative attributes. Infinity is, in a sense, just the umbrella term for all of those superlative attributes, and none of those are quantitative in nature. Those are qualitative. So I don't think that my argument against the existence of an actually infinite number of things has any bearing on this concept of the infinity of God.
I don't think I have much to add to that. Yeah, I mean, with the infinite that we were talking about, there is the quantitative concept.